for some of you who may not have been here last night, I just want to say that this is a Dowsing conference, but you know, we talk about other things than water dowsing. We talk about the title of my talk this morning is Power of Thought, and so many times the local chapters advertise a dowsing meeting, and somebody comes in to listen about dowsing, and we start talking about these other things and never mention dowsing. But so I'm going to talk about some of those other things this morning. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about dowsing, and then we're going to get into the power of thought. And like I said last night, the power of the mind is the strongest thing in the universe. But we're going to start out a little bit some basic dowsing, and then go on from there. And first of all, how I learned to douse, or how I discovered that I could douse, I was raised on a farm in northwest Arkansas. And back in those days, if some farmer needed a source of water, they dug that well with a pick and shovel. I'm sure you've all seen these old dug wells. And no one in his right mind is going to start digging a 30-foot deep hole about 8 foot in diameter unless somebody says there's water down there. And so they'd always call the old water witcher in. He'd come in and he'd go over to the peach tree and he'd cut a forked stick. Something like this. This is what we use for a forked stick nowadays, you know. Because these don't break. The forked sticks would get dried out and they would break. But these are plastic, and Bill Robinette built this one, by the way. But anyway, he cut that limb off that peach tree, and he'd just walk around and make a few marks on the ground, and then he'd turn and say, well, I believe if you dig right here, you know, 15 feet down, you should hit some water. Or however, you know, and so sure enough, you know, those people had faith in him. They'd get the pick and shovel, and they'd go out and they'd just start digging, and they'd hit the water, just where he said. But anyway, when he would get through dowsing, you know, he'd just throw the stick over there someplace, and he'd go on about his business. I was just a little tight. I'd get a hold of it, I'd run and get that stick, and I'd do the same thing he did. I'd walk across the same spots, you know, and sure enough, that thing would go down. And without any, you know, I was just a curious kid, and I didn't think a heck of a lot about that. It just worked. And back in those days, everybody knew that you could find water by using a forked stick and walking over the ground. Everybody knew water witching worked. And even now, when I do a lot of well dowsing up in northwest Arkansas, and I go out dowsing and somebody says, oh, my grandfather can do that, or my father used to do that. Everybody believes that you can find water with a forked stick. But when you start talking about map dowsing, or some of these remote dowsing type things, or finding lost people or pets or car keys, they think you're crazy. They don't believe that. So anyway, what our job is to try to educate people a little bit. But anyway, when I went in the Army when I was 17, when I retired, I bought a 75-acre farm, didn't have any water on it. And all of a sudden it just popped in my mind, well, I used to be able to find water with a forked stick. So I went and found a peach tree, cut a limb off of it, and went out where I was going to put the house, just walked around over there, and this one spot, this thing just go down. And so I just come from every direction, and right there where it went down. So I put a little stack of rocks there, and I called the well driller, and I told him to drill here, and about 83 feet you're going to hit some water. If he's sure, you know. But a lot of well drillers don't necessarily like to drill wells behind dowsers, because we find water shallow. We find running veins of water down, you know, shallower than what well drillers do. Well drillers drill down to the water table or runoff water. But the only problem with that, during the drought, that water goes down too and the well goes dry. These running veins of water that downers find, they're there forever. They stay there. Anyway, that well of mine, he went down 83 feet and he hit the water. And then I had him go ahead and go down to 145 feet just to make a good reservoir. But I had to change that pump last year. Well, was getting 6 gallon a minute. So that was 17 years ago. I had to pull the pump, put a new pump in. And I thought, well, this is a good time to test this well to see if it's still providing the same amount of water. And it's exactly the same amount of water. I turned the pump on and measured it. Exactly, still 6 gallons in it after 17 years of use, and just still running, never ran dry. So well drillers find, or dowsers find water that lasts. Not, well, most of them do anyway. So anyway, and being a curious individual, you just wonder, how does that work? And then we can find the depth, we can find the gallons per minute, we can find the quality of water. I can say, okay, this vein of water 160 feet down there, I say on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the quality of this water? 1 being the very worst water, 10 being the very best water. So you just say, okay, is it on a scale of 1, 2, or whatever the thing is, it'll tell me, yeah, right here. So on a scale of, it might be a 5 or a 6 or 7 or whatever. So, and then you get curious, now how does that work? So you just keep experimenting and doing things. And that's how I started working with power of the mind. I read someplace where someone was able to divert an underground vein of water. If a well driller drilled a well, drilled a hole, and doesn't hit water, which happens frequently, usually they just fill the hole back up and go on. However, I'd read about where somebody can douse around there. If they find a stream nearby, they can make that stream go to that well. And the way they did it, the way they taught it was, okay, there's a dry hole there, and you walk around that well to find a stream. If you find a stream over here someplace, you ask the universe or whatever the information is coming from. I just use my pencil and I say, can this vein of water be diverted into that well? And if you tell me yes, then I'll go ahead. If you tell me no, then forget it, because, the first answer you get with one of these things is 90% of the time the one, 99% of the time the one you better go with. If it says yes, I'll say, okay, now I'm going to walk up that stream, and you can actually follow a stream. An underground vein of water just meanders around underneath the ground like it would on top of it. And you can take this, or you can take one of these L rods, and you can just follow that stream up where it bends, this thing will turn, and it just, you just follow it. So I say, okay, I want to find out the very best place to start trying to divert this stream. If the well's here, the stream's running here, I wouldn't want to go perpendicular right in. I want to go upstream and kind of angle it in. So you go upstream, you find out where to do it, and the way I read about they did it, you drive a crowbar or something in the ground, and then you just, right over the stream, you just hit that, just towards the well. And sure enough, somehow the water goes in there. Now, I don't believe that hitting the crowbar has anything to do with it. That's a tool. Because your mind is what does that. If you're hitting a crowbar up here and there's a vein down there 160 feet or 200 feet, how in the world can that make that, go exactly where you wanted it to? Your mind has to have something to do with that. That's my opinion anyway. But the very first one I done, some of you have heard this story, the very first well I diverted, and I'd heard about you can do this, you don't even have to be there. You don't have to drive the bar in the ground even. You can just do it with your mind. So my daughter and her husband had bought a place about 12 miles up on a hill above us. And that well they had was always, they were always running out of water. They just couldn't, she couldn't wash her hair and do the dishes the same evening, the thing would run dry. So I was talking to her, I said, Joyce, I'm going to fix you a well here pretty soon because I read how to do that. So one evening I sat in there at the dining room table and I said, I think I'll just see if I can fix Joyce's well. So it was about the time she had been doing the dishes or whatever. And I got a piece of paper and I drew a diagram. I said, okay, this is Joyce's house here, and this is the well, and this is the well house. I doused, mount dowsed on it to find out where the stream was coming in the well. And sure enough, for her, the stream, I hadn't doused that before. That stream was missing the well, just going right down the side of it. So I said, would I be able to divert this stream? The thing said yes. And so what I done, I took it, instead of driving the bar in the ground, I got one ballpoint pen. I went upstream, found out where the best place to do it, put the ballpoint pen right on top of that vein. I got another one, I said, wham, wham, hit that thing. And in my mind's eye, I was up there doing this. And I said, okay, I think I got it done. And pretty soon the phone rang, and Joyce said, Dad, you been messing with my well? And I said, yeah, you got water? She said, no, I just quit running. I haven't got any water at all. So, I said, okay, I'll be up in the morning and see, see what we can do about it. So I went up there the next morning. This is after dark. It was, 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening when I done there. And sure enough, I dowsed around there, and the stream was here, and I just moved it all the way over. Because the chart that I had, I just was not to scale, or I just put it there, and I just testing it, And I just knocked that sucker all the way across there. And then I went up next morning and dowsed around, found where it was at, and done it right. And I had the bar, and I got it back into the well, and there's still water there. So, you have to be careful when you're working with some of this stuff, because sometimes you lose control of it. But it was a thrill to me to know that this stuff works, see? And I've read about it, and people come to these conferences and they sit out and they listen to you and say, hey, that sounds pretty good. But if you don't try it yourself, you haven't learned anything. You just came here to be entertained. And the only reason I come to these things and stand up and talk and to try to motivate people to try these things. There's nothing at all special about me. And I know 100 people that can divert water like that. There's nothing, I guess it's special, but everyone has that special thing. If you put your mind to it, and you can do it. So if I can motivate one person here to try some of these things. I'm going to tell this a few diversion stories, and I'm going to get into some more really, really good stuff. So, I douse a lot of wells. I do a lot of water wells. I do a lot of really basic dowsing, other than some of this other stuff I do. So 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I got a phone call. This lady said, we lived here since 1969. We had a well drill. We never had enough water there. Excuse me, that Arkansas flu's about to get to me. But she said, we've never had enough water, and now we decided we want to have a well drill. And so I said, okay, I'll come over and we'll see what we can find. And I went over and was talking to her, and I found out that she was the daughter of Harold Sherman. I don't know if you all, he was an author. He wrote a lot of good books, how-to books, and ESP books and stuff like that. And it was just a coincidence. There is no coincidence, as they say. It just meant, things happen that's supposed to happen. But see, I got a nice wife here.
It wasn't my idea, it was John Farley's idea.
Okay. Okay, thank you. But she was Harold Sherman's daughter, and they'd moved down here, she told me, in 1969. And that well, they just had never had enough water. And they had cisterns built for catching water off the house, and they had, just a mess. And when you have rationed water since 1969, every drop is worth a pound of gold almost, So when I found out she was Harold Sherman's daughter, it just thrilled me, because I had read his books. I had almost every book he'd ever written, and it's one of those things. And I thought, well, I dowsed around there, and I found a vein of water out there. And I thought, well, since she's Harold Sherman's daughter, she'd be willing to let me divert that. You just can't walk up to any old farmer and say, hey, I'm going to make this stream go over there. They'll kick you off their property. They think you're crazy. So since she was Harold Sherman's daughter, and she had been living with this kind of stuff all her life, I explained to her, I said, I think I can make this vein go into there. She said, oh, that'd be fine. So I did. I doused where that was, and I walk up. I found out the best place to drive my crowbar. And that's another reason you do crowbars and stuff, for the people that's watching you. If you just walk over there and say, "Scream, get over there," they don't. They gotta see you do something. See, they gotta see you. So if I drive this in the ground, and some Dowsers tell them, well, when I hit this, it's the vibration that makes the stream, move. But, so you go through the thing, and you do that. So I put that water over there in the well. I found out where to drive the bar and hit it. And so I give it a few minutes to fill up, because this well of hers had so little water. They're on pressure tanks, right? So it'll pump up, and the pressure will cut it off. You got the holding tank, about 30-gallon holding tank there. When you let the water out, the pressure goes down, the switch kicks the pump back on, it fills up again. Well, in all these years, that thing would only pump up 3 times in one day. That was it. It was just one in the morning, one about noon, and one in the evening. That's about the only 3 times they could get that. They had 90-gallon water a day. And so I waited a few minutes for the well to get filled on up. I said, okay, let's go in and turn on the water. I think we got it. And so I went in and started to turn the faucet on. She said, wait a minute. So she got a pot or a pan and put it on. She wasn't going to let any of that water go down the drain. And we turned it on, and that filled up. She got another and put it under there. Just, she filled up everything in the house. And we went out and watched the pump, or the thing just click on and click off. And it just kept on going. And it just blew her mind. And, it just made a total believer out of it.
I got a question.
Yes.
I got a well that's supposed to have water at 72 feet, and I'm down to 50 in rock. Can you divert up?
I'm sure. Why not? Why not? See, the only limits that we have is those that we put up on ourselves. Really, in this life, you have the only limit you have. See, what we're doing here is impossible. See, to the scientific mind, it's impossible. But we know that it's not. We can do it because we don't have those limits. We just do it. You just do it. That's all. And but anyway, her just kept pumping up, and she was really impressed. Harold Sherman writes all these books, or he did. He died. He had died about 2 years before that. Anyway, they decided to reissue a book called Your Mysterious Powers to ESP, and so they wrote an afterword in that book. They had a forward, so since he's dead, they wrote an afterword in it, and they put this deal here about me diverting all that water in that book. They give me about 4 pages, so it's a good. So if you see his book laying around, I pick it up, and I forgot what page. I had it memorized, but anyway, it's in that. So, and there've just been so many. I've got 100 diversion stories, I suppose. Excuse me. I was fighting the flu. We really have fought it too. I got it whipped, but sometimes it tries to get my throat. But I'm just going to tell another diversion story or so. I've diverted many, many wells where they weren't getting any water with my daughter, and then they turn it on, and it's obvious that something happened, and they're getting more water. The first time I ever seen actually the water rush into a well, there was we raise a lot of poultry in Northwest Arkansas, and this guy had a turkey operation. He had 27,000 turkeys. So they dug a big well. It was only 12 or 14 feet deep, and they put one of these 8 or 10 foot culvert tiles in there, and that was the casing. You just see down in there. You had a pump in the bottom of that thing, and you could tell at any time you could turn a pump on and time it, tell how many gallons per minute you could pump out of that well. Well, that's up close to the New Madrid Fault up in Missouri, earthquake fault. And a week or so prior to that, they'd had just a small tremor up there. And it seemed to have diverted that water, which earthquakes will do. They'll divert a vein totally away from there. Anyway, his daughter called me and said, hey, Dad's well is going dry. Could you, come up and see what you can find out about it? And so I said, okay. Her dad knows nothing about dowsing, nothing about any of this stuff. But I'd been to a few meetings with her, and, I knew her and she knew what I did. So we went up, and sure enough, that well, it was just dry. It was just a seep coming in there, and they were getting about a gallon a minute or a gallon and a half a minute. But he got 27,000 turkeys, and he's having to haul water. And so I dowsed around, and I found out where the thing had just sort of skipped around and was not running that well anymore. So I found the spot over there to divert it. And you know, dumbest thing, her dad just kind of standing there watching me. Just an old, just a farmer, didn't know what the heck I was up to. And I found the best place to do it, and I got this bar and go over the ground and hit that thing. I knew he thought I was crazy. And so I said, you know, sometimes it takes a while, and I've seen them up to 24 hours. Because maybe having to cut its way through solid rock, I don't know what's happening down there. And I said, you know, it might be a while before this happens. Okay, so we standing around, I had faith it was going to happen. We just sort of hung around the well, standing, and we just talking. I was trying to explain some things to him. And his daughter, you know, you can see where this little trickle was coming in. One of his daughters standing there, and she said, oh, look, it's getting muddy. And we walked over there to get it and looked, and pretty soon the gravel started coming out, and the water just started flooding out of there. And it just surprised him and just made me just float. You know, it just really, I mean, you know, you just can't imagine. I mean, you know, that's stuff that's totally beyond imagination, you know. But it worked. And that thing just filled on up there, and it just, I guess today they still got things full of water. But that was the very first time I ever seen it actually happen as I was doing it. And I've seen it since then too, but it just works so great that, you know, and like I say, you can do it. I believe anybody in here that's not a skeptic, and I think if you were a skeptic, you might not be here, I don't know. And so I just hope some of you try it. And it doesn't have to be just water. You know, we got noxious geopathogenic zones that are bad for your health, that may run through your house or whatever. And you can get rid of those things. You don't have to put up with that stuff. You have dominion over all that stuff if you realize it and if you know it in your heart. You got to know it. So, but I'm going to tell one more funny little diversion story. It may sound, some of you Texans may recognize. I don't know. I have a friend lives up there by me in Rogers, Arkansas, who has a son that lives in Houston, and he has some rental property. He has I think it's 12 acres. He's got a house on it, and he got a drilled well, and he rents that out, that little mini farm or whatever. And a while back he called and talked to his mom. He said, "Boy, I got trouble with that well. I had to pull the pump, and when the guy went out to pull the pump, he discovered that I had natural gas coming out of that well." And I guess in Texas, the Railroad Commission is what governs all this wells and all that stuff. And he said, "I can't use that well, and in fact, I have to find out where that natural gas is coming from. They're going to make me find out where that's coming from." And he said, "That's going to cost me a lot of money and all that." And so he, you know, she called me, and she knew that I do some weird things. And she said, "Why don't you come up? I got a dowsing job for you." And I said, "Okay." So I went up, and she had a diagram of his little farm, where the house was, and I dowsed and found out where the well and the vein water was. And I also, she told me the story about the gas being in the well, and I dowsed, and I found out where where the gas was coming into that well. You know, they were afraid it was coming from somebody's gas line nearby or whatever, so that's the reason they was going to have to find out where it was coming from. But I'd never tried this before, but I doubt, and I diverted that gas. I closed it off so no gas can get in the well. I diverted it, and he wanted me, and she told me, said, and that well never had a lot of water in it, so try to, if you can find a stream down it, divert the stream in. So I done what I thought was supposed to be done remotely. You know, I'm all the way up there in that well down here in Houston, and so she talked to him in a day or two, and he said, "Well," she said, how's the gas go?" He said, "You know, it's funny, the gas is gone, but now I got some crude oil in there." So here she called me again. And I go up, and sure enough, you know, I was just, I was in a hurry, and I was just diverting. I didn't even think about crude oil, and I just diverted. I seen something down there that needed to be diverted in that well, and I put it in there, and I guess it was a little thing of crude oil. And anyway, she called me back up, and I done it again, and thought I had it fixed this time. And so there too, she called me. She said, well, the crude oil's gone, the gas is gone. So it's all, you know, he doesn't have to spend a lot of money going down and trying to figure it out. And it really is, it's all gone. And, you know, and see, and to me, that's totally amazing. But, you know, everything I say, I can verify it, I can prove it, you know, and it's just, it's great stuff. But anyway, her son is a Harvard graduate, and he just don't hardly know what to think about that. He don't really believe it. But anyway, he was talking to her, and he said, well, he said, would you ask him, he said, I've always had hard water this well. I wonder if he could do something about that, you know. So I don't know, I tried to do something about the hard water. I don't know if that worked or not.
Harold, did he ever get water in the well?
Oh yeah, the water was just fine now. And in fact, I just talked to her last week, and I said, how's that well coming? Oh, just great. And in fact, she said, I don't even think the water's that hard anymore. So, but it's just, you know, it's just, to me, it's amazing. I think we're just rediscovering some things this day and age that people a billion years ago could do. I think people a billion years ago could do these things. But due to technological revolution, we've just sort of got lazy and just couldn't, you know, we just let that stuff all slip. But I think anybody, you can regain that knowledge and that ability. If you try it. You're not going to do anything if you don't try it. Yes.
Science guys would say, okay, how many times have you been wrong?
Pardon me?
I'm not a science guy. I think I'm just
Yeah.
the devil's advocate position, sorry. The science guys would say, how many times have you been wrong?
I'm about 95% accurate well, right now I must have 25 water wells that they haven't drilled yet. So, you know, your accuracy figure can go again.
The reason I said that, you know, they don't believe, science guys don't believe in case history is proven. And so they say, okay, for all the times that you say this happened and so and so and so, how many times hasn't it? You answered the question. That's what
Well, for this type of stuff, I know it's pretty good track record. I don't know. It just happens about every time. If I have that feeling, you know, if when you douse, if you have that, you know, you just know it's happening, it happens. You know, and sometimes if you're kind of physically down or you're, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't be dowsing. And that's another reason for me. When I douse, I ask that question: may I, can I, should I? And I've added, am I ready? What Gordon Barton does. And sometimes you're just not. Sometimes your body, you just, you know. But when I have the flu, I probably couldn't go out and do too much dowsing because it's, you know, you have to kind of be in resonance with everything around you. There's something wrong with part of your life. Well, you might not be that active. And yes.
Why wouldn't they use that to stop some of the flow of some of those 280 wells that are blowing out? Just divert the flow and shut it off.
You could do it. I'm sure you could, but you know you can't. We had people during that Gulf War locate scuds by dowsing. You'd never get an answer. You know, they would never. You know, I'm retired from the military, and I know if I wrote and say I can do that, they just ignore you. Because they wouldn't want to admit that you know we could do something so unscientific. You know. So, but that's it. That's the bureaucracy.
That happened to Bert Cameron in World War II. He volunteered to find every Nazi sub, and they just sort of ignored him. So he went ahead and found all of our subs, located them on a map, and sent them to the Defense Department. And then later on that year, he attempted to leave the country to go down to South America. And they slapped a security clearance on him. He went away.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you know, and see, these things happen. Some guy by the name of Hieronymus that does some radionics machine. He was, some of these astronauts that we used to send up and circle the moon and all that, he was keeping moment-to-moment track on their heartbeat, their blood pressure, everything. And his, he was just doing it with a radionics machine, and his matched up directly with the scientists that had the monitors on, you know. So, and I mean, you can just do this. scientists don't like for us to do that, to come up with it. 2 years ago, when I went to California to the West Coast Conference, somebody lives up in Jackson, California, which is just up above Sutter's Creek where the 1849 gold strike was. Somebody lives in Jackson. They wrote me a letter a couple of months or so before I went to California. It said, we have 7 gold claims up here, and we'd like to, you know, if you can douse and tell us where to start. We want to get some company to come in and mine this. You know, it's hard rock mining, and it just takes lots of dollars to get down to where the gold is. We'd like you to come up and see if you can tell us about where the veins are and all that. And they sent me a map. In fact, they sent me a map of each of those 7 claims. And so I said, I've never doused gold in my life. You know, I do know how it kind of runs in veins and all that. And I do know that they rate a mine by ounces per ton, you know. So we'll say you just put a vein down through there, and I say, yeah, down at 600 feet you ought to get an ounce and a half per ton, or whatever. I just had, you know, had the whole parameter laid out there. So when after the conference, we drove on up to Jackson. I told out my mouth. This is his wife that had me do this, right? He's kind of like the scientific side of it. And so I was in the dining room table, laid all my maps out there. I said, well, on this claim, whatever the name of it was, you know, I had them all named. I said, if you go right down, there's a ridge here. If you go here, you should hit whatever it was, so many ounces per ton, or a half ounce per ton, and all that. And so he reached over and pulled out a big old vein. Oh, that's just what the geologist said. You know, and on this one, he'd flip over, and I was right on with that geologist on it. Because the geologists, they take samples from the top of the ground, and then they got some formula that they go by. And it just, you know, just verified, I either verified the geologist or he either verified me, one or the other. And it just right there, right down the line. And it kind of convinced her husband, you know, he didn't know, because he had got the geologist to come in before I got there.